It had been 5 years. 5 long, quiet years since I'd last seen their faces, heard their voices. 5 years since they had, in no uncertain terms, declared me dead to them. But there they were, last month, on my security camera feed, standing outside the gate of the beautiful, peaceful life I'd painstakingly built for myself. My parents. They looked hollow. Older than 5 years should allow, like the weight of the world had pressed down on them. My mother's hair was entirely gray, and she looked frail, thinner than I remembered. My dad leaned heavily on a cane, his usual arrogance replaced by something akin to defeat. They were driving a beat-up sedan, a stark contrast to the shiny SUV they used to flaunt. And they were begging. Begging me. For money. For my younger brother, Mason. And that's when I heard myself say, words I never thought I'd utter to them, ghosts don't have bank accounts. But to truly understand the weight of that moment, to grasp why those words felt so utterly justified, we have to go back. Way back. To the beginning of how I became a ghost in my own family. My name is Ethan, I'm 32. From the moment my younger brother, Mason, took his first breath, he was the golden child. I'm really not being dramatic here. My mother still has a literal shrine of Mason's baby pictures in the living room. Me? 2 pictures. One from my birth. One from my high school graduation, where I'm partially cut off because they were trying to frame Mason, who was standing next to me. 2 pictures, representing my entire childhood. That tells you everything. The favoritism wasn't subtle. It was like they had a manual on how to create sibling resentment and followed it to the letter. Mason got everything handed to him. I scratched and clawed for every single thing. Not just small stuff, either. We're talking fundamental differences in how we were raised. Different rules, different expectations, different levels of love and attention. When I was 16, I wanted to play football. I'd practiced all summer, I was actually pretty decent. I went to my parents with a plan. I researched the costs, the schedule, everything. I thought if I showed them I was serious, they'd support me. My dad didn't even look up from the TV. He said no. Equipment was too expensive, and they couldn't commit the time for practices. End of discussion. No negotiation. Just a flat no. 2 years later, Mason wanted to play lacrosse. You would have thought he was trying out for the Olympics. They bought him top-of-the-line gear from some specialty shop 3 towns over. They drove him to every single practice, no matter how far. They attended every game, wearing custom jerseys with his name on them. They took photos. Posted on social media. Told everyone who would listen about their athletic superstar. When I pointed out the double standard, my mom looked me dead in the eyes and said Mason had more natural athletic talent, and it would be a waste not to nurture it. Like I wasn't worth nurturing. I ran track by myself my junior and senior year. Paid for my own running shoes with money from my part-time job at the grocery store. Bummed rides to meets. They never came. Not one. I placed 3rd at regionals my senior year, and they didn't even know about it until my guidance counselor mentioned it at a parent conference. The double standards continued. Mason's grades were never questioned. AC? He was finding his groove. My B? A lecture about not applying myself. Mason could go to parties because he needed to socialize. I wasn't allowed out past 9 because I needed to focus on my future. Mason got a brand new car for his 16th birthday. I got the keys to my grandmother's 15-year-old sedan and was told to be grateful I had wheels at all. For college, they told me to figure it out myself. We can't afford to help with tuition, Ethan. We've stretched ourselves thin with Mason's expenses. There just isn't money left for your education. Community college was my only option. They weren't contributing a dime. So I figured it out. I worked full-time at a warehouse, loading trucks from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Took classes part-time during the day. Slept when I could, which wasn't often. I ate ramen and peanut butter sandwiches for months. I watched my friends go off to universities, having that college experience, while I was grinding away in a fluorescent-lit warehouse surrounded by boxes. It took me 6 years to get my bachelor's degree in accounting. 6 years of exhaustion, sacrifice, and doing everything the hard way. When I finally walked across that stage, my parents showed up 20 minutes late. They missed my name being called. They found seats in the back, looking bored, and left before the reception because Mason had a thing. Didn't even stick around for pictures. My coworker from the warehouse took the only photo I have from that day. Mason went to a state university on their dime. Tuition, housing, meal plan, spending money, spring break trips. When he changed his major 3 times, they praised him for finding his true passion. When he failed classes, they blamed the professors. When he took an extra 2 years to graduate with a communications degree and a 2.3 GPA, they threw him a catered graduation party, with decorations and relatives flying in from out of state. I got a text message, "Congrats." Period. Not even an exclamation point. After graduation, Mason moved back home because he couldn't find a job that matched his expectations. So my parents converted the basement into a full apartment for him. New carpet, new bathroom, big screen TV, mini kitchen. Everything he needed to be comfortable while he figured out his next move. I, meanwhile, moved into a studio apartment the day I got my first real job as an accounts receivable clerk. 400 square feet of stained carpet and flickering lights. The shower barely produced hot water. The walls were thin enough I could hear my neighbors' phone conversations. I made barely enough to cover rent and food. When I asked if I could stay at home for just 3 months to save up for a deposit on a better place, my dad told me real men don't move backward. He said I needed to stand on my own 2 feet and stop expecting handouts. This, from the same man who had just built his other son a luxury apartment in the basement. The irony was not lost on me. Every family dinner was the Mason show. Every conversation circled back to his latest achievement, his new girlfriend, his brilliant ideas for startups that never materialized. My mom would ask him about his life in exhaustive detail. I sat there like a piece of furniture. If someone remembered to ask me anything, it was usually a one-word question that got a one-word answer before the spotlight swung back to Golden Boy. I could cure cancer, and they'd find a way to mention that Mason once donated blood. I worked my way up. Accounts receivable to staff accountant to senior accountant. Each promotion came with more money, more respect. I lived below my means, saved everything, kept my head down. My social life was non-existent because I was always working or studying for my CPA exam. But I passed it on the first try, which my parents acknowledged with 2 words, "Good job." Meanwhile, Mason got a party for landing a 6-month contract gig doing social media for a friend's failed restaurant. Mason bounced from job to job like it was an extreme sport. Social media manager for a startup that folded. Sales rep at a car dealership he quit because the hours were too demanding. Marketing coordinator where he got let go for too many personal calls. Assistant at an event planning company he was fired from for missing too many shifts. Every failure was someone else's fault. Every setback was just a stepping stone. And my parents funded every single gap in his employment without question. Car insurance. Phone bill. Spending money. Clothes for job interviews. They never once asked when he was going to stand on his own 2 feet. By the time I was 27, I had finally clawed my way to a comfortable position, controller at a mid-size manufacturing firm. Good salary, good benefits, good stability. I bought a modest house in the suburbs of Indianapolis. Nothing fancy, just a 3-bedroom ranch that needed work. The roof was old. The kitchen hadn't been updated since the 80s. The backyard was more weeds than grass. But it was mine. I paid for it with money I earned through years of grinding while my family ignored my existence. Mason was still living in my parents' basement at 25, still figuring out his path. Still being celebrated for his potential that never seemed to turn into anything real. Then the lottery happened, and everything changed. I'm not a gambler. Never have been. But my coworker, Sarah, was organizing an office pool for a Mega Millions jackpot that had reached $400 million. She caught me in the break room and asked if I wanted in. $20 for a share. I said no. $20 was $20. Sarah wouldn't let it go. 3 times that afternoon she came to my desk. 2 emails. She stopped by my office the next morning. Finally, I caved, just to get her off my back. I gave her the $20 and figured I'd never see it again. The drawing was Friday night. I forgot about it completely until Monday morning when Sarah came running into my office, looking like she'd seen a ghost. For a second, I thought something terrible had happened. Then she started screaming that we won. We didn't win the big jackpot, some couple in Florida got that, but one of our tickets matched 5 numbers without the mega ball. Our group of 12 coworkers split $2.4 million. After taxes and the split, my share came out to roughly $127,000. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's not exactly life-changing money. And you're right. It's not quit your job and never work again money. It's not buy a mansion money. But for someone who had been scraping by and saving every penny for a decade, it was huge. It represented freedom in a way I had never experienced. I paid off my house completely. No more mortgage payments. I paid off my car. Paid off the last of my student loans. I put the rest into investments and retirement accounts. Suddenly, I had 0 debt and a fully funded emergency fund. The psychological weight that lifted off my shoulders. I can't even describe it. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't worried about money. I made the mistake of telling my family. The dinner started normally enough. My mom had made pot roast, and we were all sitting around the table pretending to be a functional family unit. Mason was going on about his latest business idea, a subscription box service for men's grooming products. He'd been talking about it for months but hadn't done anything beyond creating a Pinterest board. My dad nodded along like Mason had just invented the wheel, while my mom looked at him with stars in her eyes. When there was a lull in the Mason Appreciation Hour, I casually mentioned my good news. I figured they might actually be happy for me for once. Maybe this would be the thing that finally made them see me as someone worth acknowledging. I told them about the office pool and my share of the winnings. I even downplayed it, saying it was enough to pay off my mortgage and put some away for retirement. The silence was deafening. My mom stopped mid-chew. My dad put down his fork. Mason looked up from his phone for the first time all evening. They were staring at me. My mom was the first to speak. She looked at Mason, then at me, then at my dad. Her voice had this tone I knew all too well. The tone that meant I was about to hear something I didn't want to hear. The tone that usually preceded her explaining why Mason deserved something and I didn't. She said it was wonderful news and the money couldn't have come at a better time. Mason, she said, just needed some startup capital to get his business off the ground. She suggested that since I was already financially stable with my good job and my little house, maybe I could help my brother finally achieve his dreams. She said it like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. Like, of course I would hand over my lottery winnings to fund Mason's subscription box fantasy. I literally laughed. I thought she was joking. I looked around, waiting for someone to crack a smile. She wasn't joking. None of them were. My dad jumped in. He said family helps family, and that's just how it works. He reminded me that they had always been there for me. I almost choked on my pot roast. They had never been there for me. Not once in my entire adult life. I paid for my own education while they funded Mason's extended vacation. I paid for my own car while they bought Mason a new one. I paid for my own everything while they handed Mason a silver spoon every time he batted his eyes. Mason, to his credit, at least had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. But he didn't tell them to stop. He didn't say he could figure it out on his own. He just sat there, looking at me expectantly, like I was an ATM that had finally started dispensing cash. I said, no. Plain and simple. I told them the money was mine, and I had plans for it. Plans that included securing my own future because nobody else was going to do it for me. I said it calmly, clearly, without raising my voice. That's when everything went sideways. My mom started crying. Not sad crying, but angry crying. Her face got red, her voice got loud. She accused me of being selfish and ungrateful. She said she always knew I was jealous of Mason, but she never thought I would be cruel enough to watch him struggle when I had the means to help. What kind of person refuses to help their own brother when they have more money than they know what to do with? I pointed out that $127,000 was not more money than I knew what to do with. I told her exactly what I had done with it: paid off debts, funded retirement, created an emergency fund. Responsible adult things they had never helped me accomplish. She didn't care. She just kept crying and talking over me. My dad stood up so fast his chair fell over backward and hit the wall. He called me a disappointment and said everything they had ever done for me clearly meant nothing. He said Mason had real potential, and I was just an accountant who got lucky. He said accountant like it was a slur. Like the career I had built through years of education and hard work was somehow less valuable than Mason's potential to maybe someday, possibly, start a subscription box company. I stayed calm. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't storm out. I simply stated the facts. I reminded them of every single time they had chosen Mason over me. The football versus lacrosse. The college funding. The car for his birthday versus my grandmother's hand-me-down. The basement apartment versus being told real men don't move backward. The graduation party versus the 3-letter text message. Every double standard. Every ignored achievement. Every dollar they spent on him while telling me to figure it out myself. I told them I had worked for everything I had, and I wasn't about to hand it over to someone who had been handed everything his whole life. I said that if Mason wanted startup capital, he could do what I did: get a job, work hard, save money, live below his means, sacrifice, grind, earn it. Mason finally spoke up. He said I was being ridiculous, that it wasn't that serious. He said family is supposed to support each other. He said he would pay me back once his business took off, the same business that existed only in his head and a Google Doc he started 6 months ago. I told him no. I told all of them no. Then I got up from the table, grabbed my jacket, and walked out of that house. Over the next few weeks, the pressure campaign began. My mom called me every day, sometimes multiple times. Sometimes crying and begging, telling me how worried she was about Mason's future. Sometimes cold and threatening, telling me I was going to regret this when they were gone. She left voicemails alternating between guilt trips and veiled threats. She texted me Bible verses about family loyalty. My dad sent long emails about family honor and how disappointed my grandparents would be if they could see how I was acting. He compared me to his brother who had cut off the family years ago and was now miserable and alone. Mason showed up at my house twice. The first time with a printed-out business plan clearly written in one afternoon. He pitched me like I was a venture capitalist. I told him I wasn't interested and closed the door. The second time, he came with my mom. They tag-teamed me on my own doorstep. My mom cried while Mason gave me the hard sell. I told them both to leave. My mom called me heartless. Mason called me a sellout. I closed the door and didn't answer when they knocked for another 20 minutes. Then the family meeting happened. My parents called a gathering at their house with my aunts, uncles, and cousins. My dad called me personally, insisting my presence was required for important family business. I knew it was a trap, but I went anyway. Foolishly, I believed that maybe the extended family would see reason. Maybe someone would acknowledge that I wasn't obligated to fund Mason's dreams. I was wrong. My mom had spent the weeks before that meeting poisoning the well. She had called every relative. She had told everyone her version. I had won millions in the lottery and refused to share a single penny with my struggling brother. She conveniently left out the years of favoritism, their financial support for Mason, their complete lack of support for me. She painted me as a greedy monster, hoarding wealth while my poor brother suffered. I walked into that living room, and every single person looked at me like I was something they scraped off their shoe. My Aunt Carol, my mom's sister and her biggest enabler, spoke first. So disappointed, Ethan. Money changes people. Clearly, it's changed you for the worse. My Uncle David said blood was thicker than water and I should be ashamed. He conveniently forgot that nobody had helped me through tough times. My cousin Brooke, who I'd always thought was the reasonable one, said she couldn't believe I would let money come between me and my family. She said Mason had always looked up to me. Mason had never looked up to me. Mason barely acknowledged my existence unless he wanted something. I tried to explain. Tried to give them the context they were missing. Every time I opened my mouth, someone cut me off. My mom would start crying louder. My dad would talk over me. Mason would shake his head sadly like I was the unreasonable one. The narrative had been set before I walked in. I was the villain, Mason was the victim. Finally, my dad stood up. He announced that since I had made it clear I didn't consider myself part of this family, they would grant my wish. He said I was dead to them. Officially and permanently disowned. He told everyone present to treat me the same way. No contact, no acknowledgement, no invitations. As far as they were concerned, he only had one son now. Then he pointed at the door. My mom was crying again, that satisfied kind of crying. Mason stood behind them, arms crossed, a smugness on his face. My aunts, uncles, and cousins all nodded along like my dad had just delivered some profound wisdom instead of banishing his own child over money. I stood there for a moment. I looked at each face. These people who were supposed to be my family. These people who had chosen Mason over me at every turn and were now banishing me for refusing to continue the tradition. I said, okay. Just, okay. Then I walked out of that house for the last time. I drove home that night and sat in my driveway for a long time. Then I went inside and started making changes. The next morning, I blocked every single one of them. My parents, Mason, aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone who was at that meeting, and everyone who reached out afterward to tell me how wrong I was. I changed my phone number. Deleted my Facebook, my Instagram. I wanted to disappear from their lives as completely as they wanted me gone from theirs. The first few weeks were strange. I kept expecting my phone to ring with another guilt trip. I kept waiting for someone to show up at my door. Nobody did. They actually meant it. They actually cut me off completely. Part of me was relieved. Part of me was angry that it was so easy for them. I threw myself into work. Took on extra projects. Stayed late. Came in early. My boss noticed. Within 6 months, I was being groomed for a promotion. Within a year, I was vice president of finance. Within 2, I was CFO. Each promotion came with a bigger salary, better benefits, more responsibility. I invested everything I could. Built a portfolio that would have made my past self weep with disbelief. I bought a bigger house, this time on 5 acres just outside the city. A real house, not a starter home with a leaky roof. This one had a pond in the back and a detached workshop where I taught myself woodworking. I installed a security system with cameras at the front gate because the property was set back from the road, and I liked My privacy. I traveled to places I had always wanted to see. Japan for 3 weeks. Iceland during the Northern Lights season. New Zealand, where I went bungee jumping off a bridge and felt more alive than I had in years. I sent postcards to nobody. I dated for the first time since college. Actually dated, not just thought about it. I met women through work events and mutual friends. Some relationships lasted a few months, some only a few weeks. I wasn't in a rush. I was learning what I wanted and what I deserved. I made real friends who valued me for who I was. Guys I met at a woodworking class who invited me to their poker nights. Couples from work who included me in their dinner parties. People who asked about my life and actually listened to the answers. People who celebrated my wins without asking for a cut. And I got married. Her name is Olivia, and she's the most incredible woman I have ever met. We connected at a conference in Nashville and spent the entire evening talking about everything and nothing. She laughed at my jokes. She asked follow-up questions when I talked about my work. She looked at me like I was interesting instead of invisible. She's a financial analyst with her own career, her own ambitions. When I eventually told her my whole story, she didn't pity me or try to fix me. She just said it sounded like I had built something amazing out of a bad situation. That was it. No judgment, no advice about reconciliation, just acknowledgement. She knows everything about my biological relatives and has no desire to ever meet them. Her family welcomed me from the first moment she brought me home. Her mom made me a plate before I even sat down. Her dad asked about my work and actually remembered the details for the next time I visited. Her parents call me son. Her brother invites me to watch football every Sunday and always has my favorite snacks ready. I finally understood what it felt like to belong somewhere. 5 years passed. 5 years of no contact. 5 years of building something real. Then last month happened. Olivia and I were getting ready for a Saturday morning trip to the farmer's market when our security system beeped. We have cameras at the front gate. I pulled up the app on my phone, expecting to see a delivery driver. I literally dropped it. Standing at my gate were my parents. My mom's gray hair, her unhealthy thinness. My dad, leaning on his cane. The beat-up sedan. Olivia picked up my phone, looked at the screen. She asked if those were the people she thought they were. I nodded. She asked what I wanted to do. I told her I wanted to hear what they had to say. I drove down to the gate in my truck. I didn't open it. I didn't invite them in. I just rolled down the window and asked what they wanted. My mom started crying immediately. She said they had been trying to find me for months. They needed to talk to me urgently. It was about Mason. I asked again, calmly, what they wanted. My dad cleared his throat. The arrogance I remembered was gone. He looked utterly defeated. He said Mason was sick. Really sick. Some kind of rare autoimmune condition attacking his nervous system. He needed specialized treatment at a clinic out of state. Experimental, expensive. Insurance would only cover a portion. They had burned through their savings. Taken out a second mortgage. Sold Mason's car, most of their valuables. They needed money. A lot of money. They had heard through the grapevine that I was doing well. He asked if I could find it in my heart to help my brother. I asked how much they needed. My dad said the treatment would cost around $200,000 over the next 2 years. They had maybe $40,000 left. They needed me to cover the rest. $160,000. My mom started pleading through her tears. She said she knew they had made mistakes. She said they were sorry for how they treated me. She said Mason was her baby, and she couldn't watch him suffer. She begged me to put the past behind us and help my brother. I asked where Mason was. Why wasn't he here asking for himself? My dad said Mason was too sick to travel and too proud to ask. Too proud, the kid who never earned $1 in his life was suddenly too proud to ask for $160,000. My mom reached through the gate bars and tried to grab my arm. I pulled back before she could touch me. She started talking faster, more desperate. She said they would do anything. Apologize publicly. Tell the whole family they were wrong. Make it right. Just help Mason first. I asked her if she remembered the family meeting. The one where my dad pointed at the door and told everyone I was dead to them. She said she remembered, and she was sorry. I asked her if she remembered what she said to me when I tried to explain my side. She went quiet. She hadn't said anything. She had just cried and let everyone else attack me. My dad tried a different approach. He started talking about the medical details. The name of the condition, the treatment protocol, the success rates. He had clearly memorized all of it. He was trying to make it sound urgent and scientific, like if he presented enough facts, I would be swayed by logic. I let him finish. Then I asked him one question. Would you have come to Mason's gate, asking him to help me? Neither of them answered. I looked at my mom with her gray hair and her tears. I looked at my dad with his cane and his defeated posture. I said 4 words. Ghosts don't have bank accounts. Then I rolled up my window and drove back up to my house. They stood at that gate for another hour, pressing the buzzer over and over, crying, yelling. My mom collapsed on the ground at one point, and my dad had to help her up. He stood at the camera and talked directly into it, apologizing for everything, begging me to reconsider. I watched it all on the security cameras and felt nothing. Eventually, they left. 2 weeks later, they came back. This time, Mason was with them. He was in a wheelchair, looking thin and pale. My dad pushed him up to the gate while my mom pressed the buzzer. I watched on the cameras as Mason looked directly into the lens and started talking. He said he was sorry for everything. He said he should have stood up for me. He said he needed my help and he was begging. I didn't go down to the gate. I turned off the monitor and went back to making breakfast with Olivia. They stayed for 3 hours. Mason kept talking to the camera. My mom kept crying. My dad kept pressing the buzzer. Eventually, a neighbor must have called somebody because a police cruiser pulled up. The officer talked to them for about 10 minutes. Then they left. The next week, my Aunt Carol showed up. She came alone, driving her fancy car up my gravel road like she owned the place. She stood at the gate and demanded I come talk to her. I watched her on the camera for about 30 seconds before I went back to what I was doing. She left after an hour of yelling about family loyalty and how I was killing my brother. Then the letters started arriving. Handwritten letters from my mom, 3 or 4 pages long, talking about all the good times we had as a family. Except I couldn't remember any good times. Every memory she referenced was actually about Mason. She just didn't realize it. My dad sent a formal letter through a lawyer asking if I would consider a loan with interest and a payment plan. I threw it away without responding. Mason sent a letter, too. 5 pages of apologies and explanations. He said our parents had always put him in the middle. He said he never asked for the favoritism. He said he knew it was wrong, but he didn't know how to stop it. He said he was dying, and the last thing he wanted was to die without making things right with me. I read the whole thing. Then I threw it away. A month after the gate incident, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered because I was expecting a work call. It was my cousin Sam, the one who had always seemed uncomfortable at family gatherings. He said he wanted to apologize for the family meeting 5 years ago. He said he knew they were wrong, but he was too scared to speak up. He said my parents had been calling everyone trying to raise money for Mason, and nobody had much to give. He said they were going to lose the house. I told him I appreciated the apology. I told him I didn't hold anything against him personally. Then I told him that what happened to my parents and Mason wasn't my problem anymore. He said he understood. He just wanted me to know that not everyone in the family agreed with what happened. He said he hoped I was doing well. I told him I was doing great. Last week, Olivia and I had dinner with her parents. We told them we're expecting our first child, a little girl. Her mom cried happy tears. Her dad shook my hand and pulled me into a hug. Her brother started making jokes about being an uncle. It was everything I never had growing up. On the drive home, Olivia asked if I ever thought about reaching out to my biological family just to let them know about the baby. I told her no. They declared me dead 5 years ago. Dead men don't send birth announcements. She squeezed my hand and didn't say anything else. Yesterday, I got a notification that someone had been at the gate again. I checked the security footage. It was Mason, alone this time, in a different wheelchair. He sat there for about 20 minutes without pressing the buzzer or saying anything, just looking at the house in the distance. Then someone came to pick him up, and he left. I deleted the footage. Some people have been asking what happened with Mason's treatment. I found out through a friend of a friend that my parents did eventually raise enough money. They sold the house, took out loans, and apparently got some help from a charity that assists with medical costs. Mason started treatment about 2 months ago. I don't know how it's going, and I don't plan to find out. My Aunt Carol apparently told the whole extended family that I'm the reason my parents lost their house. She's been telling everyone I could have saved them, but chose not to. A few cousins have reached out to yell at me. I blocked them all. My cousin Sam messaged me last week to let me know that my parents moved into a small apartment. He said my dad went back to work at 68 to help cover the bills. He said my mom barely leaves the house anymore. He wasn't trying to guilt me. He just thought I should know. I thanked him for the update. Then I went back to painting the nursery. Was I wrong to hold my ground?